I decided not to keep any of the cockerels from my latest hatch, even though I am planning on adding a new young rooster to the flock. So today, I thought I'd explain what I'm looking for when I'm choosing a rooster to join the flock. The first and most important factor that I'm looking at when I'm assessing a rooster for potentially staying in the flock and becoming the new breeding rooster is their temperament. Now, this is the absolute most important factor. So if I was choosing between some roosters that were just physically amazing and ticked every single box that I wanted, but they didn't have the temperament that I wanted, I wouldn't keep them. It is super, super important because you want a rooster that's good to be around and is good to your hens and fits in well with the flock. But you also want that temperament to be passed on because at the end of the day, the rooster that you're adding into your flock is probably going to be contributing 50% of the genetics in your flock. So you want to make sure that he is the best he possibly can be. So when I'm talking about temperament, I'm talking about sort of the personality and behavior of the rooster. So the first thing I'm looking at is he calm? Now, this is going to be a bit breed dependent. Obviously, if you're picking a Orpington rooster, he's going to be a lot more chill than a Leghorn rooster. But I'm taking that into account. What are my breed-based expectations? And I'm looking for a calm rooster within those sort of exceptions of breed. And I'm looking for a rooster that doesn't panic easily, isn't excessively flighty, doesn't just run and lose his mind the moment something changes in his environment. Now, obviously, all chickens, including roosters, are going to panic and lose their minds if something really dramatic happens. But I'm looking for a rooster who is mostly chill, mostly able to cope with the routine aspects of life. The next thing I'm looking for is a bird that is friendly but not too friendly. When you're talking roosters, they can be too familiar. So I'm looking for a rooster who is respectful but not panicky and doesn't run away from me. So that is a rooster who will move out of the way of when I'm moving through and things like that. And if I'm sitting or weeding in the garden or something, he's happy to come close and sort of hang out and be near me, but he's not coming up, jumping on me. He's not pecking me at food time. He is respectful, doesn't get all up in my face or peck at my hands. So that's really important. When you have a rooster that is overly familiar with you, where they think it's okay to jump up on you or to peck at your legs, and I don't mean in an aggressive way. Obviously, any rooster that shows aggression is just out, not even considered. But there are sort of pecks that are more friendly or attention-getting, but I don't want that sort of behavior displayed by my roosters. Now, this overly friendliness is one of the main reasons I'm not choosing a rooster from my current hatch, because they are extremely friendly. They're totally happy to be right up next to me, and they're quite happy to actually give me the occasional little peck or get right up into the feed bowl, right up with my hands at feeding time. And that is something that over time can develop into a rooster who just doesn't respect humans, doesn't move out of your way, and that becomes a distraction from him doing his actual job. If he's obsessed with you and what you're doing, he's not looking after his hens. So that is something that's very important. A lot of people think that they want a friendly rooster who they can pat and cuddle, but no, that is not what you want from your rooster. If you want to have your hens like that, not a problem. But with a rooster, it is very good that there is mutual respect between the human and the rooster. My two current roosters, Kowalski and Astarion, they meet these requirements really, really well. They're chill, they are not excessively friendly, but they're totally happy to be near me, hanging out with me without taking liberties. I do remember one hatch I had a few years ago, and it was a spring hatch, so the chicks were growing up as the weather was getting nice. And when we were outside at the picnic table, enjoying dinner, well, some of those little roosters thought it was okay to jump up on the table and get around the plates and steal food from our hands. And that can be a little bit amusing when your roosters are only like this big and kind of cute and hilarious, but it's absolutely unacceptable if your big, huge barred rock rooster decides that that is behavior that is okay to continue. So when those little baby roosters were doing that kind of behavior, I instantly knew, no, these guys are not going to get to stay in the flock. Now, I've been talking about sort of human-rooster interactions, but essentially the main thing you're looking at is actually how your rooster is going to interact with the hens. You are looking for a rooster who is going to be a gentleman and not a thug. So you're looking for a cockerel who isn't harassing his hatchmate pullets. He's not trying to be too mean to them. He's not trying to engage in breeding type behavior with them before they're ready. And if he's starting to get a little bit interested in the older, mature hens, that he is showing that interest in a respectful way. So that is things like hanging around with them, trying to offer value. It's strutting around and looking like a big man. It's tid-bitting for them, saying, oh, hey, I've got some cool food over here. Come and check it out. I'm valuable to you. And it is doing a little wing dance if he's trying to sort of move a hen around. That's the sort of good gentleman rooster behavior you're wanting to see your cockerel start to develop. You don't want to see him aggressively going after your older hens, chasing them, harassing them, trying to overpower them in a disrespectful fashion. You want him to be proving himself to them, not taking advantage and throwing his weight around. Now, when it comes to the pullets that he's grown up with, he is going to be a little bit aggressive with them in terms of like, get out of my space, I'm going to make you go over there, and that is normal so long as he stops that sort of aggressive behavior when the pullet moves out of his way and just goes somewhere else. If he continues to persist in being mean to the pullets, then that is not acceptable behavior, and that cockerel isn't going to grow up to be the sort of stand-up guy you're looking for when you're choosing a rooster. So once you've determined that you've got a cockerel with an excellent temperament, you want to look at the physical characteristics that you're looking for in your flock. Now, if you are breeding a particular breed, you've got purebreds, then this is relatively simple in terms of decision making. You want to pick the cockerel that best fits the breed standard. Now, just because a chicken is a particular breed doesn't mean that they're a good specimen of that breed. So if you're breeding purebred birds, if you want to go to shows or you just want to have really good quality birds of that breed, then you want to get yourself really familiar with the breed standard for whatever breed it is that you're breeding and learn how to identify the potential in the cockerels, because you're probably going to have to make the choice before he's fully reached maturity. So it might take you a wee while to learn what sort of characteristics physically in a young rooster will carry through and develop into the best match for the breed standard. So get clued up, get learned up in your breed standard and make your choices physically based on those guidelines. Now, for me, I'm not really trying to breed purebred birds. I mostly got sort of mixes. I often choose purebred roosters to be sort of like part of the mix because there's just a few less variables when you're starting to mix breeds together. But I'm more concerned about performance and best fit for my environment than any particular breed standard to follow. So I will talk about what sort of things I'm looking for in my flock and how that's changed over time. I'll talk first about why I chose my rooster Astarion as my main flock rooster. So he currently is the main flock rooster. He fathers the vast majority of the chicks if I'm raising my own chicks. And he's a pretty cool dude. So he ticked all the temperament boxes. But physically, while he's a bit of an odd-looking chicken, just in and of himself, what I wanted him for was the diversity of genetics that he carries and can pass on. So he is a mix of a Splash Orpington hen and Kowalski, my older rooster, who is a barred rock. So Astarion can pass on the barring gene, and from the Splash Orpington, he got a dilute gene. So the dilute genes turn black into sort of what's called blue, but is essentially grey of different shades, and turns the red colour of chickens into cream. And he can also have black and regular brown chickens as well. So he can produce a huge colour range in his offspring, and that's what I was looking for because I really like interesting chickens. And because he's got the Orpington and the barred rock, he's a big chicken, like a really, really big guy. And he generally produces very big offspring, which is what I really like. However, they're extremely big, and I think I went a little bit too far in that direction. So looking forward to the future, I'm trying to bring that size back a wee bit. And he also tends to produce daughters that go broody a lot, like excessively so. Now, his daughters do lay fairly well as sort of laying hens, but because they go broody so much, it really cuts into their sort of overall productivity for the year. So need to get that a little better and reduce that broodiness down. And then there's Kowalski. So he is my OG breeding rooster who I kept from my very first hatch of chicks when I decided that I was going to get into breeding chickens. And I essentially just got really lucky with him. I chose eggs from a really reputable local breeder, and all of the chickens that hatched were just absolutely fantastic, great examples of barred rocks. And I kept Kowalski because his temperament was the best, and he's just worked out really, really well. He's been a great guy, but he's getting old. He's essentially retired now, and he appears to be retired from most breeding-related duties as well, because pretty much all the chicks are fathered by Astarion. So Kowalski's just living his best old guy retired life. I'll go over the things that I'm looking for in my next rooster. Now, these are my personal preferences for my goals, and your preferences might be different. So this isn't like a copy me situation, but I'm just going through what is important to me at the moment. And the first one is a bit strange. It's that I want to have yellow legs in my flock. Now, I've had all sorts of chickens with all sorts of different leg colors, and I've decided that I like yellow legs the best. It's just kind of what I like. Now, there is a small practical reason for this, and that is in hens with yellow legs. You can sort of tell the status of their laying season by the color of their legs, because as they lay eggs, the pigment comes out of their legs to be used in the eggs. They're the same pigment. So as they're laying, their legs get a lighter color. Then when they take a break and have their molt, they start to put that color back into their legs because they're not laying eggs. And when you see them all bright and vibrant and fully feathered with bright legs, you know they're going to start laying any moment. But quite honestly, I really just prefer yellow legs. I prefer single combs. I've had a few different comb varieties in my flock, mostly single combs and pea combs and sort of combinations of the two. And I've decided that I like single combs best for a couple of reasons. The first reason being that it is easier to tell at an earlier age whether you have pullets or cockerels when you hatch chicks if they have a single comb. It's not the only factor, but it does make it easier. And the second reason is that single combs can be better at distributing heat on hot days. They give chickens a really nice surface area for dissipating heat out of their bodies. And as the summers get hotter and hotter, I think that's important for my environment. So I'm looking for a rooster with a single comb. I'm looking for a wide chest or sort of breast area. Now, this is a very practical consideration because I am ultimately trying to have dual purpose chickens. So that means they are good for laying eggs and they are good for eating. So as I'm pushing towards a slightly smaller chicken, I don't want to lose the structure of the body, sort of conformationally speaking. So I'm looking for a wide placement of the legs, not legs that are right up close to each other, because that's an indication of a wide breast. And you can see it in the developing cockerels, which ones are very narrow through the chest and which ones are nice and wide. And I'm trying to go for that nice wide chest. That's actually one of the reasons that I'm not keeping any of the cockerels from this latest hatch, because they are crossed with a very light laying breed, and that's giving them a much narrower frame, narrower than I'm looking for, and I'm just not wanting that. I'm wanting to stick with that sort of dual purpose wide chicken body type. And the final thing in my physical characteristics wish list is that the rooster is from a breed that does not go broody. So I want a rooster that has just had broodiness completely taken out of the breed. And that is because my hens go broody a lot. So moving forward, I want to sort of balance that back down to chickens that do go broody but don't go broody as frequently. And I'm hoping to be able to do that by having a rooster that just doesn't have genetics for going broody. And that's sort of my physical characteristic wish list. That's the things I'm looking at when I'm choosing who's going to be the future flock rooster. But the most important thing that I'm looking at first is temperament. The physical characteristics are the next important thing. And it's totally possible to get everything in one package, but you might have to be patient and wait for the perfect chicken to arrive.